to Arcane the Brewcast. I'm Jamie, your Arcane Brewer.
I'm Jake, your Arcane Engineer.
Thank you to Momrock for the use of their song Conversation in the intro. America. There's one thing we can all agree on about it. We grow a lot of corn. And we turn a lot of that corn into sugar, which we put into pretty much everything we consume. But today we're going to focus on the corn that is processed as explosively as the fireworks with which we celebrate our heritage. Today we're going to be brewing with caramel popcorn. Since this is our 10th episode, we're going to make a big deal out of it and brew two big batches. The first is going to be a fruity summer lager, made from just flavored caramel popcorn and a little bit of grain. Then we're going to make a Graf, a beer cider hybrid with caramel popcorn and apple cider. But before we get started on these brews, let's learn a little bit about popcorn.
A popcorn kernel is a ball of starch encased in a shell. When it's heated, the increase in temperature causes it to expand and build up pressure inside of the shell. Eventually, the pressure and heat get high enough that the starch actually turns into a foam. The starch is able to absorb water, kind of gelatinize, and then it explodes and foams out. And as it's foaming out, it's almost instantly cooled and solidifies into popcorn. That's why they almost always look like these little tiny explosions, because it's hot foam exploding out of the shell. It's actually very similar to what happens when marshmallows are made, we discussed in a previous episode. I suppose popcorn is also a stabilized foam. Torrefaction is a thermochemical process by which a biomass, such as grain, is heated, causing it to expand and gelatinize. In brewing, torrefied grains, most commonly torrefied wheat, increase body and head retention. Beyond brewing, puffed wheat, rice, and corn are also very common in breakfast cereals.
Corn, or maize, has been cultivated in North America for at least 10,000 years. And people have been turning it into popcorn since at least the 4600s BC in Peru. Popcorn is tasty, easy to make, and fairly inexpensive, so it tends to be a very popular treat whenever and wherever margins are thin. Kettle corn, which is sweet popcorn cooked in sugar, salt, and oil in a cast iron kettle, was likely developed in 18th century Germany to make it crunchy and sweet while extending its shelf life. It was brought over to America soon after by Pennsylvania Dutch settlers. Caramel corn was the next step. Invented in the 1870s by Frederick and Louis Ruckheim, and then supposedly debuted to the public in 1893 at the Chicago World Fair with peanuts and molasses, a prototype of what would soon be sold as Cracker Jacks. To source our caramel popcorn, we go to Incognito in Newport, Rhode Island. For 10 years, Incognito has created some of the most unique popcorn flavors on the market, with vast varieties of caramel popcorn, chocolate-covered popcorn, all kinds of savory flavors, CBD-infused popcorn, and even a brand of popcorn for dogs. If you live near Fall River or Newport, Rhode Island, check them out, and try some fireworks, the rainbow popcorn currently out for the 4th of July. Incognito isn't a sponsor. We've paid for all this popcorn. But the Incognito staff have visited our foolproof tap room in Pawtucket a few times, and I consider myself a friend of the brand. Since I was already buying in bulk, I bought a ton of other flavors to try while we're waiting for the brew to finish. We'll just show a few of them in this episode, but if you want to hear about all 20 flavors of Incognito that we tried, we'll have that in another video coming out soon. Let's get this popcorn home and get started with our first brew. A popcorn summer lager. By using caramel corn in our brew, we have two sources of sugar. The caramel glaze, which will dissolve and release simple sugars into our wort, and the starches in the popcorn itself, which will need to be converted into maltose in a mash. To facilitate that, we're going to include some malted barley for enzymes, which we're milling at home. I'm only using a couple pounds because I want popcorn to be the primary grain. We're also going to be using rice hulls, and lots of them. Rice hulls have no sugar and no flavor, so they don't really count as an ingredient, but they'll help give our mash structure just in case all the popcorn dissolves to mush. Here's the popcorn for the first batch. About 5 pounds of red, white, and blue. All our ingredients are ready, so let's start mashing. First I start heating up our strike water. This mash is using 3 different flavors. Yay Blue is cotton candy flavored, and Cherry Lollipop tastes like, well, a cherry lollipop. The white popcorn is kettle corn with a clear sugar glaze and a light dusting of salt. Just like with our Honey Nut Cheerio brew, we're going to be using our Grainfather, which is a mash tun appliance with a built-in heating element, at least until it breaks and we have to move everything over mid-brew. We mix the popcorn and rice hulls as well as we can, taking a moment to appreciate the pretty colors before dumping it all in the mash tun and adding our hot water. I'm getting a strong, fruity breakfast cereal smell, sort of like Trix or Fruit Loops. It smells pretty delicious. Unfortunately, after setting the temp and stepping away for a minute, we realize that the temperature isn't going up and the heating element is dead. So we drain our purplish gray mash liquid and move the wet grain over to my old regular mash tun. We'll do this old school style, on the stove. We mash in again at 148 degrees Fahrenheit and step away for an hour. When we get back, I drain the liquid from the mash tun and begin sparging. Sparging is pouring water over the grain bed to wash out any remaining sugars. Once the mash tun is again fully drained, we can put all the wort together into the boil kettle. You want to boil wort for at least 60 to 90 minutes to completely remove all off-flavor precursors before cooling and fermenting it. When making a beer, you also add hops during this period. I measure out a very small amount of hops for bittering and a much bigger portion for aroma. When discussing ingredients in the boil, additions are always given as a countdown in terms of the number of minutes left in the boil. Bittering hops are added at 60 minutes, near the beginning of the boil. Aroma hops are generally added about 15 to 10 minutes. At about 10 minutes or so, you'll want to add your wort chiller so it's fully sanitized for the heat of the boil. You'll also add your Whirlaflock or Irish moss tablets, which help with beer clarity. Once we hit 0, we immediately want to start cooling the wort, so we stop extracting bitterness from the hops. Once we've cooled down the wort to about 60 degrees, I transfer it into a carboy and pitch Saflager W3470, the lager yeast used by Weihenstephaner. We're using an Inkbird to keep this cooler at 55 degrees, which makes an ideal fermentation chamber for our fruity summer lager. That was a lot of work. Let's relax with some popcorn before we get on with the second brew.
This is Kyle. Hello.
You remember Kyle? He was here in that other episode where we tasted stuff.
Ye Old, because it's old. Makes sense as a place to start as any. So we'll start with Ye Old Caramel.
Did you recognize?
Incognito popcorn's made in Fall River, Massachusetts, but they also have a storefront in Newport, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
You'll also find them on shelves at breweries and probably other places. Definitely Foolproof Brewery.
Mm-hmm. They're delicious. They have a ridiculous. We have 20 different flavors of Incognito popcorn here, and we have barely scratched the surface. This is like Cracker Jacks.
Yeah.
This is like Cracker Jacks.
Mm-hmm. All the glaze is very crunchy. None of it is like too gummy.
Very sweet.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
That's really good.
There's like that hint of molasses, but it's not like as all in as Cracker Jacks are, I think.
All right.
What do we got next? Kettle corn.
Classic.
Kettle corn. Like the Ye Old, we brewed with the kettle corn.
So this reminds me of I used to do the Civil War reenactments, and when we would go to those places, they would have like old timey stuff. And one of the things was that they had was kettle corn, like vendor, and he was there. And I remember like once we were going down like the street, they made makeshift streets. We'd go down and I could smell it. I'm like, this is where the kettle corn is. We gotta go ahead over there. And it was not expensive at all. It was always fresh. Oh my god, it tastes so good.
I think kettle corn's always been my favorite popcorn.
Yeah.
Before, I'd really been exposed to a lot of different popcorns.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know PB&J popcorn was much back then.
Because like it's sweet, but it's also salty.
Yeah.
And usually when you're having it like hot, like at a fair or a festival.
That was tasty.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yay Blue. We use this in both of our brews. It's a cotton candy flavor.
That's so cool.
I'm gonna go light on this.
There's a popcorn that got for me one time. It was from like, what was it? Like Lancaster. It was like Amish popcorn, but it was made with a blue shell instead of, I guess, a regular shell. And you'd think that when it was popped, it would look like this, but it doesn't look like that when it pops. It actually just kind of is a tint blue on the inside. Everything is still just like the white fluffy thing, and I'm like, that's funny.
Makes sense.
Oh wow,
This is as blue as you could possibly want it to be.
this is amazing.
Yeah, very cotton candy.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely comes through. Us out.
I didn't have high hopes for this one. I was like, I'm just gonna try and see what
Yeah.
this is. This was real good.
Just lightly fruity. Definitely get that kind of cotton candy, like blue raspberry. The other thing I'm getting from this, I'm realizing now, is that kind of like breakfast cereal marshmallow fruitiness. Which is what we were smelling when we were mashing the popcorn lager. Remember how it smelled so intensely of breakfast cereal? I think another one of these guys is also guilty for some of that, but I think the Yay Blue contributed a lot of that. So, I dig it.
I dig it. I dig it a lot.
Let's have cherry lollipop. We use this in both the popcorn lager and the graph, the apple cider thing.
This smells real sweet.
Oh damn. Oh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, cherry lollipop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like a
Exactly
Tootsie
what
Roll.
it says on the tin.
Oh, goodbye. Look.
Yeah, it's good, but we've had so much sugar that I don't feel like I need it.
That reminds me of like Trick cereal too for some reason. I don't know why.
And we got cereal smell from the like this. These were the two cereal ones we did. Yeah, the Yay Blue and the cherry lollipop.
To give that
Licorice.
extra sweet flavor. Licorice.
Feels like the natural
Licorice.
progression to cherry.
Okay, now for the second batch. This time we're making a graph. A graph is a term for a brew made with both apples and grain. People have been brewing with both of these things for thousands of years, but as far as I know, the term graph did not originate until 1991 when it was mentioned in Stephen King's third Dark Tower book, The Wastelands. After seeing it described in the book, several home brewers, and then professional brewers, began making and releasing graphs of their own. Just like our last brew, we're going to start by mashing our popcorn, this time swapping out most of the kettle corn for ye old caramel. As one might expect from the lager and the popcorn tasting, we're still getting that sort of breakfast cereal fruitiness, but this time, of course, it's being joined by the caramel. This time I remember to do an iodine test before we finish, and sure enough, all our starches are converted. We mash out, then sparge the grain to get every last bit of sugar. As we collect the last of our sparge liquid, I note the distinctly oily film on top, roughly the color of caramel sauce. As it all heats up, the kitchen smells incredible. Now comes the long boil. The wort doesn't have a lot of sugar. It's close to where the last batch was, but I want this brew to be stronger. The apple juice we're going to be blending in at the end doesn't have that much sugar by itself, so we're going to boil the wort down before we blend in the juice. And we boil down for a really long time. Still smells amazing in here, by the way. While the wort is cooling down, I take some of the apple juice and use it to rinse the remaining honey out of a mostly empty bucket. It's not much, but every bit helps. Then we add the cooled wort and the rest of the apple cider. Once we're topped off, I add Fermentis Saft Cider TF6, a cider yeast known for its highly fruity aroma. The carboy smells like Ziegler's caramel apple cider. I only hope the flavor isn't completely lost in fermentation. This graph and the lager are going to take some time to ferment, but once they're done, we'll keg them up and bring them with us to the New England Homebrewers Jamboree in Tamworth, New Hampshire. If you want to try some with us, we'll see you there in September.
I don't know what.
I don't recommend mixing them all up and eating them like that.
Then why did you
I think this is.
Well, now we know. We found out, so
did
now you
find
don't
out.
have to.
We found out.
also figured out that this is a very interesting game for me to play. Trying to figure out of the ones we just had.
Yo, what
which
are we
one's which.
eating?
Yep.
That was carrot cake from what I just had. That's a carrot.
Hey, like, comment, and subscribe. Leave your mom rocks in the comments. Thank you to YouTube for your intro.
That was licorice with jalapeno pepper dust. But yeah, thank you to Mom Rock for the use of their song Conversation. Oh man. Peanut butter with soup. My God. You guys have fun.
da 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 da